Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming?
This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Edgar Mitchell died last night. He was the sixth man to walk on the moon, a feat that took place on February 5th, 1971. Poetically and somehow wondrously, he died on the 45th anniversary of his moon landing. But that momentous moment, which included his photographing Alan Shepard, a famous photograph, standing next to an American flag, was only the beginning of his journey. On his way back to Earth, he experienced something exceptional. Here it is in his own words.
We'd left the moon. We're on the way home. And my job primarily was with lunar surface activities and the lunar spacecraft to go down to the surface and come back. So when we were on the way home, largely my primary job had been completed. And we were coming home on a well-functioning spacecraft. We still had experiments to do, et cetera, but it was much more relaxed. And in addition to that, we were rotating every 2 minutes to keep a thermal balance on the spacecraft. It's called the barbecue mode, for example.
So it was like a barbecue pit. Okay.
Right. But what that caused to happen was that the Earth, the Moon, the Sun, and the 360-degree panorama of the stars and the galaxies and the galactic clusters were there, visible in space. The stars and everything are 10 times brighter. There's an order of magnitude more visibility due to the lack of intervening atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So that sight is utterly overwhelming. And what happened was I was looking at that, and I realized from my science training that I was thinking about the molecules of my body and the molecules of my spacecraft, and my partners were manufactured in some ancient generation of stars.
Oh, think of that.
And wow, but wait a minute, that's what I had learned in college, doing my doctoral work, but those were my molecules, and suddenly it became not intellectual, but personal. Mm-hmm. It became a visceral experience, and accompanied by an ecstasy, a wow. It was a personal connection, and I didn't know what that meant. I had no understanding of that whatsoever. But to jump ahead, it took me several months of research before I discovered in the ancient Sanskrit that experience was called samadhi. And it was the situation where you see things in their separateness, but you experience them viscerally with bliss in their unity and their connection.
That's beautiful.
And so it was a pretty wow experience.
So it's so interesting that your science led you to the moon, and your science led you to a subjective experience that the ancients would describe maybe more in a mystical tradition.
Yes. As I continued my research, I got all excited by that after I got back. It was so profound that I couldn't let go of it. I had to go find out, what does this mean? What's going on up here? Mm-hmm. And that's when I started doing my research, and finally, I found nothing in the science literature.
Nothing?
Well, nothing about consciousness.
Okay.
Consciousness wasn't a subject appropriate for science, certainly not in those days. So I started digging into the mystical literature, not the religious literature, but mystical literature, pre-religious literature. And that's where I found it. Then that really aroused my curiosity, so I started looking in other traditions, other cultures too, other than the Hindu culture. And I eventually began to realize that every culture among their ancient people, the Aboriginal people of whatever, their shamans, their medicine men, their mystics, or by whatever name, were reporting these similar types of connectedness with everything. In other words, the mystics of all traditions forever have been saying we're all interconnected in some mysterious way.
Much later, Edgar Mitchell would found IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where he would explore consciousness and paranormal abilities and events in science. This would make him not only a pioneer in outer space, but in inner space as well. Inspired by his story and the strangeness of his death right on the eve before this program, Fly Us to the Moon, about the paradigm of space travel, Stephanie Slevin and I have composed a song in tribute to Edgar Mitchell. I wrote the lyrics, but she wrote the music, and now we'll perform it for you as a singer for the first time with music by Hassan Khan.
Fly us to the moon, let us roam around the stars. Mine 1,000 asteroids and set a base on Mars. When Edgar stood upon the moon, he didn't know his fate. But he'd become a pioneer and open up the gates to space inside the human mind, a realm so vast and so divine, a place so filled with godly grace, it could eclipse all outer space. Fly us to the moon, let us roam around the stars. Mine 1,000 asteroids and set a base on Mars. Launched the ship to head for home, their job at last was done. To stabilize their journey home, the ship needed to be spun. A spectacle with no holds barred, a gorgeous dance of spinning stars. Galaxies, the moon, the earth, invoked in him a strange rebirth. Fly us to the moon, let us roam around the stars. Mine 1,000 asteroids and set a base on Mars. He now knew that exploration must go inside to find the key, to find a proper explanation for this state of ecstasy. The cells and atoms of men are one, merged in mind with endless sun. He knew at last he could be free to solve the wondrous mystery. Fly us to the moon, let us roam around the stars. Mine 1,000 asteroids and set a base on Mars.
Welcome back to Threshold. Before we begin, I'd like to say a word about the mission of this program, which is to help empower people spiritually to face our personal, business, and political lives. Yes, I believe there's an enhanced spiritual consciousness which can take us to a level where guidance and direction is stunningly available. But this path requires a willingness to abandon separation from a higher level of awareness and to seek within ourselves something higher than our separated sense of selfhood. It's not an easy path, and seeking the truth spiritually, I believe, cannot be separated by seeking for truth in all areas of our lives. And an appetite for truth, as well as a strong sense of conscience, are vital components of a true seeker at a certain point, at a certain moment on the path. I believe that conscience is folded into a true higher consciousness, and so these elements are also folded into this program. A couple of weeks ago, we had a great conversation with SARAH Westall, the founder and host of Business Game Changers on the Conscious Radio Network. SARAH shares with others in the alternative media an appropriate sensitivity to what is happening in our country, but also, as a specialist in paradigm shifts, for better or for worse, in technology and business practices, she shares a sense of history and understanding of how technology and business can lead humanity upwards or in a rapid descent to self-destruction. I invited SARAH back for an overview of several exciting topics, all somehow revolving around our mission in space, defining our lives in ways often beyond our personal control and providing clues to what may tangibly affect us with some miraculous technologies and a new vision of the universe. Today, SARAH will help us look at certain aspects of space technology and exploration in a different way. So let us begin. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
Sarah, when you look at the effect of conventional space travel on our lives, beginning with Sputnik, from the various trips to the moon to the tiny robot adventures in our probes to far-off planets, do you think that's really changed our lives tangibly? Hasn't it been more psychologically than physical? I mean, aren't the taxi or train rides we take more tangible to us than we generally think of space travel? I mean, you can't even get rides in Virgin Galactic. Yet for the lucky few, there is Space Adventures, a company which furnishes zero-gravity atmospheric flights, cosmonaut training, orbital space flights, and even spacewalks, but only to a handful of people. What do you think? Not all that different.
Well, actually, I think there has been significant differences. Yeah, we're not able to jump on a shuttle that takes us to Mars yet. And so it's not like getting on an airplane yet. But there's been not only psychological difference, the paradigm of, wow, there's just so much more. We're part of this big galaxy and we can actually travel out there. Got us thinking, got us out of our head a little bit and, new paradigm of what's possible. But just the everyday things that we experience, like satellite television, came from the communications by NASA in the 1960s. So satellites now are used for all sorts of things, military, commercial applications, cell phones. Obviously what the NSA and Snowden told us about everybody being watched. I mean, it really does affect us every day. Laptops, if you can believe it, were first developed for space in 1983 for the space shuttle. It was called the shuttle. Yeah, it was called the Shuttle Portable Onboard Computer, Spock. And then other things, they've come up with solar energy advancements. Obviously, they're always looking for ways to harvest energy, which is light, which is be regenerated. They can't take a whole bunch of fuel up there all the time. They're looking for ways to get energy just from what's around them. And a lot of the advances in solar energy actually came from NASA and the space program. They have developed the silicon-based cells to enable low-cost, highly productive harnessing of solar energy. So a lot of what you see now on the rooftops of buildings and, that have got the commercialization of solar to be just part of our existence. If you're looking at California and a lot of other places, even in the third world countries, I guess they're not all third world countries anymore, but China and parts of Africa, they just build their infrastructure with solar now and different harvesting technologies. So that has really changed us. But even little things, like highway safety, medicine, we all know about freeze drying technology, right?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
I mean, there's a lot of things that affect our everyday life, which is pretty remarkable. We just don't think about it that way.
Yeah, I understand. So that is really a tangible form of connection, although it's not as direct or as cool as going on a space flight.
Yeah, I mean, we can't get on the shuttle going to Mars tomorrow. We can't make a bus ticket kind of thing, but we're just happening to go to one of the moons of Jupiter. But, SpaceX and some of these commercial companies are working on that. I have an interview coming up that'll air live on Monday with the president of SpaceX, and she talks about that's their goal is to work on getting to other planets and eventually intergalactic travel. It's really cool. I mean, that's the Elon Musk company, and that's their goal. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I noticed over the years that he had a lot of rockets that didn't work, but he's getting much, much better.
Yeah, they have a first in a lot of things. They've been able to take a rocket up to space and bring it back. The first commercial company to do that. They just did that in December. And they've been able to do a lot of things, but their goal is to have spaceships that can take us, to different planets. And they are working on wanting to go to Mars. I mean, that's their goal. And NASA has spun out what they're doing is they're spinning out the development of the traffic part or the transportation part of it, and they're focusing more on the science and other things. And the military budget's actually bigger than the NASA budget. And so there's a lot of space programs, and I know you want to talk about that more in the show, but these commercial companies, what they've really spun out is the travel part of it. How do we get to there, from Earth and back and make it in a affordable, realistic way? Because right now these rockets that they send out, they throw away. I mean, it's like a one-time use. And so how do we create something that's like an airplane where you land, you use it again, and it can be used for the relatively for the masses. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be for the masses for a long time, but for a regular person.
It will be for the regular wealthy people for a while.
Well, it'll be for the even the extreme wealthy for a while, right? or maybe the special people who have special intellectual gifts,
or they're celebrities, and will make a big flash.
Exactly.
Well, still, in all, putting the physical side of it aside for a second, there's still the entire question about what is produced within us, which has involved, I believe, a significant shift of consciousness that is no doubt a paradigm shift, but one filled with massive contradictory and unnerving sub-paradigms. It's not, I don't know if you even heard of this, Sarah, but a long time ago in the 50s, George Powell produced something called Destination Moon, based on a book by Robert Heinlein. In this, I mean, I was very young when I heard this. I actually had a record of it that I'd play over and over again and pretend I was on one of these sort of acceleration pads where I protect myself from the heavy gravities. But anyway, this rocket takes off despite all kinds of legal and perhaps financial obstacles. The crew faces danger, but makes it to the moon, lands, and come back. Now, we just saw an example of Edgar Mitchell. He landed on the moon, and then he comes back, and he has this mystical experience. And maybe there's even more than that he and other astronauts experience, because we'll talk about that later. Now, Sarah, with your recent excursion into the idea of a secret space program, because you talked about it recently, and all the things we hear reported by ex-astronauts, UFO witnesses, and renegade scientists and engineers, is it all that unmysterious and prosaic? Is space really that, like the Destination Moon or just Virgin Galactic going somewhere and so forth? Or is it something else?
I still think it's mysterious to us because we haven't been there, right? I guess there's parts of the bottom of the ocean that's pretty mysterious, or the inner core of the Earth that's pretty mysterious because we just haven't been there. Going to the moon, for the limited amount of time that we went and just the few people that did is makes it still mysterious and remarkable for the average person. Yeah, the trips to outer space, the satellites going up there, all the what do you call it, the probes that are going out to outer space, that's not all that exciting to people anymore. But if we found life, if they actually came forward and said, yeah, there's life and real significant life or advanced life in this solar system or something, that would be incredible for people to hear coming from the authorities, right?
Yes, that's true. When I go out here, I'm in American Fork in Utah, and I go out on a snowy morning and I look at these mountains. It's just so awesome and beautiful. And so I didn't really mean that to sort of downsize the value of these spectacles that this world and this plane of reality presents us. But when I think of some of this stuff that's going on with the secret space station, I do think it's sort of mysterious, perhaps not in the happiest way. It's sort of a strange thing.
Well,
maybe I should call it weirdness.
Well, it's weird and it's strange whenever there's a lot of activity that isn't transparent to us. When there's billions of dollars spent on things that we don't know about, and then we feel that it's being kept secret for whatever reason, then our minds start to wonder, and we're paying for it. So we should wonder. We should wonder what the heck they're doing. And, I'm not a fan of huge parts of our budget being secret and not being able to tell us what they're spending the money on. I just don't think that's right. I understand defense and I understand military, our need to protect ourselves. I just don't understand spending billions and billions of dollars and keeping it from the American people. I mean, there has to be a way to make this more transparent, but there is just too much credible evidence of what's going on. People have, too many high-level people have come forward and said they've seen things. I mean, President Carter said he saw a UFO. Reagan said he saw one. The government of France has come out and said that this stuff is real. Russia's way more open about it. Other countries are open about it. We're not. And it's quite strange how some company or some countries are coming out and talking about it. But so there's just too much credible evidence pointing to this stuff being real. And you listen to high-level military people talking about their experiences, things that they've seen. The abduction stories are quite amazing. I haven't been abducted. Actually, part of me wants to be, because it's like, it would be nice to have some kind of experience. But when you listen,
you might have an experience you don't like. Listen, Sarah.
Well, I know.
We do have to take a break for a second. And I pause on that exciting note because we're going to talk about all kinds of things like that in a few moments. Meanwhile, for a while, as we head to the break, we're going to divert ourselves by another way of looking at moon flights, with this somewhat germane from our subject. We wrote a little song, it's called "Fly Us to the Moon," but let's hear the original song that most people remember now from Wall Street, the movie. But this is sung by Patricia Welch, who produced a 46-song 3-CD called Great Entertainment, Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia.
Fly me to the moon, let me sing among the stars, let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, baby, kiss me. Fill my heart with song, let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Fill my heart with song, let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, in other words, in other words, I love you.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs.
I'm going
to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, dinner, and dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who is a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called dwarves, the youngest members of this stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy, we ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
We're back with Sarah Westall discussing the mysteries of space travel. Just going back to the moon landing, I wanted to just mention that even the moon landing is suspect. There's been a long time debate among a small number of people saying that the moon landing was completely faked. There's another group of people that say it wasn't totally faked, but a lot of it was faked because they wanted to hide the technology that might be hidden from what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, the private space program, that might be hid there, plus maybe relics of earlier civilizations on the moon. So it's a pretty strange story that even something that seemed to all of us so obvious, like they flew to the moon and they were heroes, could be in a debate. Isn't that strange, Sarah?
Well, I think that's the whole point. Anytime that you make things secret, then it creates this wonder, and people's minds can wonder, and it creates conspiracy theories and all sorts of things. That's the problem with keeping things secret. I don't think the actual moon landing was staged, but it could be, based on things that I've seen, is that the pictures and the photos were staged.
And there could be components of it might have been staged.
Yeah, certain components of the pictures could have been.
And they were hiding the flying saucers.
Well, yeah, I don't know. There could be all sorts of reasons why. They needed good PR photos, obviously, because they spent all this money. And it could be pretty risky to just rely on the astronauts taking in space with all the things that are going on. And they didn't know what could possibly happen. So they wanted to probably make sure the PR was right. But anytime you do things in secrecy, it creates issues. And that's what they're doing. It creates issues.
Recently you did a program which we were actually referring to before, but this was a program with Daniel Rist, who calls himself the dark journalist, about the so-called secret space program, which we're kind of discussing but haven't really explained too much to those who might not have heard about it. It involves the claim that there's a breakaway civilization fostered by various suggested types of alien contact in which certain human beings have already obtained faster than light propulsion. The recent premiere of the X-Files reopened. Did you see that, Sarah, yet?
I did, and I liked the first two. I didn't like that third episode.
Oh, you did see the first one, right?
I've seen all three of them, yes.
Well, the recent premiere of that suggested that many people Many aspects of the UFO experience, including sightings and abductions, have been perpetuated by a very sinister breakaway civilization. In fact, some of the speculators about a real-world culture of this type claim the origin in the Nazi survivors of the war who had been indulging in very advanced space technology. The idea of a secret space program and other features of so-called UFO experience and even science fiction have certainly impacted on our idea of space travel. How did this concept of this secret space program first get into the public mind, Sarah?
Well, I think there's numerous facets to this. I mean, first of all, the understanding of science and technology by the people who study it and have gotten pretty advanced with it compared to the people who are the everyday, average person, it's a gulf. I mean, there's a huge difference in understanding of certain things by, people who study science and people who don't. And as time goes by, that gulf is becoming more and more. But on top of that, there's the money gulf, the 1%, the elites, we call them. It's even less than 1%. There's this incredible separation now of people who have, the people who have a ton of money and the people who don't. And then the government doing all sorts of things that are off the books, spying on us, which we all know is happening. But also all the things that are going on, with the collapse of the 2008, the collapse of the market. And we know that a lot of money was funneled out off the books. Just a lot of things that are going on that is not transparent. And so you just know that there's something going on. And with the fact that NASA has been pretty much turned into more of a science-based program, and the military side of the space program is so much larger, and they never talk about it. So we have no idea what's going on in that. It just gets back to that lack of transparency creates this idea that there's this breakaway civilization. And there's a lot of truth to that, just based on the gap of understanding there is between the highly educated and the non-educated.
Well, we're going to celebrate Stanley Kubrick's venture, for right or wrong, with an original composition by my friend and Russian composer Edgar Ahrens called Space Odyssey. Just a short one, and then we'll go into the commercial break. I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you're in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God! Are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you are facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070. We're back with Sarah Westall, who has a program called The Business Game Changers on the Conscious Radio Network, and we're discussing the secret space program and its economics, which are kind of very, very challenging to understand. Could you go into that a bit, Sarah?
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit. The secret space program first isn't quite really on aliens and UFOs. They really separate themselves, and what they're really looking at is what's actually going on in space with the governments in the world. And so there's a few camps out there. There's the UFO. People think that the UFOs that everyone is seeing, like the Phoenix Lights, where thousands of people saw it, are really the military's inventions and the military's programs. And there's a big camp out there that think that there really isn't anything extraterrestrial. It's just stuff that we're doing. And then there's another camp that thinks that UFOs are really alien beings from other solar systems and dimensions, right? And there's a big camp of that. And then there's another camp of just it's a combination of the two. But their goal is to really bring in credible evidence, because if you don't try to bring in the most credible evidence, and things have to be documented, you have to have credible sources of information. You need to have real serious people doing, the reporting and the research. Otherwise, it just can't be taken seriously, right? And so that's their goal, is to be just more professional about this and then take this to more, because we know things are going on, what is going on, and to try to understand it. And, as far as the economics goes, there's, the Federal Reserve, which we don't really know what's going on at the Federal Reserve because it's only been
It's hard if you don't audit something to know what's going on.
Yeah, there's no way to know. It's only been audited once. But there's another thing that's even more secretive, which is the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which has never been audited since it's been created. It was created in the 1930s I have some notes on exactly what year it was created. I can't remember, 1934 or something like that. And it was created to bring stability to the dollar. And when all the gold was confiscated, that was what was backing it. And the only person that has right to oversee it is the Secretary of the Treasury. And they actually work out of the New York Fed. And so basically the Federal Reserve takes direction from this Exchange Stabilization Fund, but it's never been audited and there's no oversight. So it's really odd what is going on. They do put out reports of what, some of what has been funded. And when you look at some of that stuff, it's not just for the stabilization of the dollar, unless you really expand what the stabilization of the dollar is, which is a lot of military.
Expand it into space.
Well, yeah, well, I think a lot of that stuff is even really dark. What is really going on? I mean, how much of the Pentagon's budget? Yeah, how much of the Pentagon's budget is really used in space? There was this good 60 Minutes episode where they showed some of the things that the military is doing in space, and they have the different orbits, the outer orbit of the Earth they control, and they use that for security surveillance and to be able to control any weapon that might hit our country. And so there's just a lot going on that we don't know about. And it was a pretty interesting episode. But the scariest thing really are nuclear weapons. Those are extremely scary because the probability as time goes on that at some point they'll be used is almost a certainty, because the more hands that nuclear weapons get into and the more time that passes, it becomes an absolute certainty that it'll be used somewhere. And that's why expanding to other planets and underground bases and ways to protect the human race is important.
Well, another thing that you haven't, maybe we mentioned it before, there was that $2 trillion that was missing the day before 9/11 that Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld mentioned to the public.
Well, that's just crazy. I mean, all the different branches of the government have significant funds that are just missing. And so, where is that going? What's going on there? And you can't audit, like the housing department. There's more funds missing from there than almost any organization, and you can't audit it. They won't let you do a real, there's been organizations that have tried to get in there and audit it for real, and it's just pretty much a quagmire and a joke. And it's sad because that, I can get pretty angry when it comes to taxes, and so I want this to be an uplifting show, but it's just wrong. It's just wrong for our taxes to be spent in ways that we have no idea. It's just wrong.
It's sort of undemocratic, I would say, to the least. I would like to play a little clip here of somebody who's in sort of the other camp about the secret space program, Richard C. Hoagland, who's famous for his development of the concept and book called Monuments of Mars, The Face on Mars. And I'd like you to hear something about his answer to the question, which impinges on all of this, about maybe even the secret space program. Why did we give up the moon?
Because what we have now been looking at are photographs, data returned from several different types of missions over several different years, from 1966 through 1972. The Surveyor, the Lunar Orbiter, and the Apollo missions. And on each of these separate technologies, with different lighting, different geometry, different technologies themselves, we have found and corroborated what we're going to show you in the next few hours. We have found, apparently, the real moon, the moon that perhaps only a few inside NASA have ever really seen. Have you ever wondered why in fact, it is a quarter of a century this week since Apollo 10 went to the moon, we haven't been back? Have you wondered why the only return mission in all that time was a military mission lofted a few months ago by the Pentagon? And why you've heard almost nothing about it?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question, isn't it, Sarah?
Well, Eisenhower originally decided that space exploration should not be given to the Pentagon. They actually had debates about this, and the different branches of the government were trying to figure out who should have control of it. And they decided at that time under Eisenhower that it should be given to a civilian open agency, and they called it NASA, and that it should be given to the people because space exploration should be for everyone. But what has happened since then is that it is shifted to military control, which is what they wanted originally. So over time, the powers of having it be under military control has won. And NASA focuses more on, exploration out to different planets and the science. And military is focusing on the military part. And so what I think happened, and what just seems really clear, is the moon is being used as a military, part of the military. And it makes sense. It's a base that they can use that's close to the Earth that they can use as, it makes sense that the military would take that over. Whereas NASA, you can go out to Mars, you can go out to these other things, but we need to control this space so that we can watch what's going on Earth and everywhere else. I mean, they own the outer what do you call it? The outer, I just said it. The outer, what do you call it? The ring around the Earth, the outer orbit.
Yeah,
Orbit. I should know that word. They own the outer orbit. The military does. It makes sense that they're gonna want the moon as well. As far as there being all sorts of alien things going on there and sorts, if there is the ability for advanced life to travel this far, which we can talk about later, because I don't think we're that far off from being able to do it ourselves. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't want to land on the moon and check it out. It makes sense. But as far as, us abandoning it, I don't think we have abandoned it. I just think it's been taken over by the military.
Well, let's take a break for a second and then come back and finish out this hour with some interesting discussion about that point. If you like Threshold Radio, a program which deals with core issues affecting our personal, political, and spiritual lives, and advocates the creation of an enlightened, informed citizenry, not only in America, but throughout the world, then you might think of supporting both your product and business and our message by advertising on our show. All programs are archived and are supported in various ways, including social media, our outreach being broadcast weekly on VegasAllNetRadio.com, a very advanced internet broadcasting station, but also archived directly on our websites on YouTube and in SoundCloud. We believe in time we will have a very broad outreach. Through New Galaxy Enterprises, our parent company, we can create a wide range of marketing and advertising components to complement your advertising on Threshold Radio and increase your outreach in many creative and exciting ways. If interested, just go to www.thresholdradio.com and fill out a contact form with your interest. That's www.thresholdradio.com. New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to JohnnyBlueStar.com and let me know. That's JohnnyBlueStar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them." Again, this other Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's Westside Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
Hi, it's Johnny Bluestar back with SARAH Westall talking about the secret space program. And, it could be the military. I don't know what you think of Mr. Hoagland. Are you acquainted with him at all?
Well, I've seen some of his stuff. I don't know what I think. I've seen those pictures, and some of it seems like there's a lot of imagination that goes into it. Right?
It's hard to tell, especially since what we will get into in the next part of the show. We'll get into a little bit more about the claims that he's making about a code or codes involved in some of these, the relationship between archaeological structures, and then we're going to go into another interpretation of all that. It's very hard to tell from the outside. I have to say, I do sense something about that face. That face is really strange.
Well,
but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not natural. I don't know the answer to that either, but I do find his claims very intriguing. We're going to be discussing more about the paradigm of space and about possibly forms of intervention and secrecy that are a bit more exotic and may or may not have, substance. But we do know this, Sarah, don't we, that there are literally thousands of sightings of UFOs.
Yes, there's thousands of it. In fact, we even found the NBC was recording a football game, and one of the things is that we can't see everything. Our human eyes are limited, and we can't see things that are going too fast. So there's probably things that are going on all the time around us that we just can't see. But NBC was recording a football game, and they saw a UFO go across the sky, and it was recorded, and you can slow it down. It was on the Huffington Post. Incredible. It looked like a little saucer. Yep.
Yes, well, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait just about 5 minutes or so before we return to Threshold, and we really get into some of the more mysterious sides to this question of UFOs and space travel. And we will be right back with Threshold Radio in just a moment. This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define Threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. This is Johnny Blue Star. We're back with SARAH Westall talking about our work with space travel, or trying to understand the paradigm. SARAH is involved with hosting and producing Business Game Changers, which is broadcast on the Conscious Business Radio Network. Meanwhile, we've been plunging deeper and deeper into the brighter and darker worlds of space travel technology and its implications. One of the things that we had spoken about in the last part of the program was Stanley Kubrick, who claims to have discovered photographic evidence, at least, of various types of artifacts in Mars, pyramidal objects, as well as the face of Mars itself, which is like a statue. If people haven't seen it, it's quite well known, and also ruins on the moon. But furthermore, he claims that in this geometry of the placement of different objects, for instance, one of the insignias on the moon is supposedly a crater that has an equilateral triangle stuck in the middle of it, something that should warn any serious scientist that there's something interesting going on, and that's what he says. But I want to say what he said that these clues are about, Sarah, and get your comments. He says his organization is called the Enterprise. He says he spoke about it many times. The extraordinary rediscovered field of hyperdimensional torsion field physics leads directly to an extraordinary torsion field technology, machines that can affect and fundamentally transform not only all known interactions between energy and matter, such as tapping into a source of limitless, non-polluting energy via direct manipulation of the underlying torsion field, or ether, of three-dimensional space. But a technology based on unlimited matter transformation can fundamentally re-engineer even entire solar systems and build artificial worlds. If not terraforming natural ones into any new environment, the terraforming engineers can also actually create worlds. At any rate, you can see, despite the grandiose side of those possibilities, that he is talking about some kind of free energy, is he not, Sarah?
I think he's talking beyond that, but is he saying that the structures that are found on the moon tell us a code that tells us all these things, or
on the Mars and the moon? Yes, it's you. Are you aware of the straight lines in Wiltshire, England? Well, it's sort of like the straight lines that there is a geometrical pattern, but in this case, it reflects a very high level kind of physics. Yes, that's part of the main purpose. He's talking about codes, and as we proceed, we'll see how there's another person who's been an investigator of crop circles who is very certain that these codes also exist in crop circles. Well, some kind of code.
Well, I think there's codes in a lot of the building structures that we have found on Earth, right? The pyramids and the fact that everything's connected on different latitude and longitudes and all over the world. So there's a lot of that. And we're going to send messages to each other in codes. So I don't know what that's all about. It could be an expansion or extension of that. I don't know if it goes into, if he can read into those structures saying that we can terraform the whole entire solar systems and change that. I just don't know if those codes tell us that. I'd like to see more of the details, if that makes sense.
What he's saying at least is that these interactions between energy and matter, he's talking about them tapping into a source of limitless, non-polluting energy.
Well,
that's what I was thinking, that I know that you've been delving into free energy systems.
Well, yeah, the 0-point energy field, we have working energy, and from the University of Colorado, they have an excellent physics program there, and they came up with a way there's a lot of patents out there that the government holds and things, so we don't know what's going on with the military and where they're advancing that, but just our own commercial-based stuff, we're coming up with things that are getting a lot closer to being able to, do things out on other planets. And part of that is having an energy source, and they have a way to indirectly tap into the 0-point energy field. And basically the concept is how an electron goes around the nucleus?
Yeah.
And there's a rule or a law of physics that anything that's going around needs to slow down. So like if we have something that's orbiting the Earth, satellite, every so often you have to give it a burst of energy so that it won't, so it'll just slow down on its own. The Earth orbits the sun, and we're slowing down, and takes a long time for us to slow down, but we're slowing down. Everything slows down. That's the law of physics. So the idea was that the electron can't be going around forever without slowing down, without getting energy technologies, these crystals and things. You can slow down the electrons and manipulate at the nuclear level, the atoms and things. And they slowed down the electron to see what would happen if they slowed it down. And sure enough, it got a boost of energy. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. And so they're assuming that's a 0-point energy field. And so they did it. They're starting to do it in mass. They're sending it through this little catheter and slowing down the electrons. They get a bunch of energy. They take it, by taking it, they're slowing down the energy, and it's just a constant machine. And it's an endless little battery. And, they're starting with batteries so that they can actually get it out into commercial use. So it'll be really amazing. We'll have laptops that don't need to be plugged in. We'll have cell phones that don't need to be plugged in. And this, if they're left alone and they can commercialize it, it should be within the next decade we'll have all that.
Well, if they develop small enough toothpicks, we could manipulate those electrons ourselves, right?
Well, yeah. But, it's incredible what we're capable of doing in the commercial world.
Before you say anything else, maybe we better patent it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's patent that little toothpick idea. But as far as being able to actually, I don't think us humans have the mental capability yet, the mental capacity to understand how to re-engineer entire solar systems and things. And if they're sending us some code, I think it's beyond our capability of understanding. I really do.
Well,
and so I don't know.
It would be amazing if it was true.
Yeah, I mean, we
could have another Star Trek part of the series.
Well, and that's why I wonder, where is he getting this information? I don't know how you could just come up with that. I guess I
don't think he did just come up with it. I mean, I think he's worked on it with various physicists. But all I can say is what Bertrand Russell said: the suspension of judgment is an essential operation of the intellect.
Oh, absolutely! Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I just have I don't know. My ability to understand physics and energy enough to totally transform an entire universe or solar system is not there. And I don't know if we have the ability to really read all those codes and get to that level yet. I just don't. I don't know if we have enough detail, if we're close enough. That's where I am. I'd have to see more information to be able to say, okay.
I believe that he thinks that it would that this has to do with free energy too. Not necessarily for recreating solar systems.
Yeah, well, we know that free energy exists. We know it. We've seen it. There's patents out there.
Do you think that, what has this got to do, the kind of techniques you were talking about, manipulating electrons, is this anything at all connected with what Tesla was trying to do? Because I believe he really thought he was on to creating free energy, but was kind of stopped in the middle by his...
Well, and I don't... I know he was into all of this. He was into all sorts of different. He wanted to get to the energy that's in the earth. He was tapping into 0 point energy. He actually, which is interesting about him, he found this dark night satellite. Have you heard about the dark night satellite?
No, just from you right now.
Very interesting development. Back in the let me see, I have a note here of when the exact year he found it. He found, let's find this. I want to give the audience the real year. And back in 1899, he found this unusual, unnatural object orbiting the Earth, and it was sending out signals to him. So back in 1899, he found this. Obviously, we didn't have satellites up, right? And
maybe that was Batman.
Yeah, wow.
Right? Oh, okay, maybe.
But and it was later confirmed by other scientists in 1932. And he actually wrote about it in an article in 1901. And do you want me to read? Let me read a little bit of what he said here.
Go ahead, please.
This was from something he wrote in Talking with Planets. It was an article that he wrote in 1901. It says, "It was sometime afterward when the thought flashed upon my mind that the disturbances I had observed might be due to an intelligent control. Although I could not decipher their meaning, it was impossible for me to think of them as having been entirely accidental. The feeling is constantly growing on me that I had been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another. I was not merely beholding a vision, but had caught sight of a great and profound truth." Isn't that amazing? There's a
yes.
Pepsi did a short film on this, and you can find it probably on YouTube or whatever. And they talked about the Black Knight satellite that Nikola Tesla, and then they did a fictionary story about people trying to investigate what this is coming, what it was from. And then people of the world need to be ready to accept that there's advanced life before they will acknowledge themselves to us. But it was this thing done by Pepsi. It was really high quality. It's really interesting that they put that out. But the other thing about this satellite, and back in the when these other scientists came up with it, that's credited for figuring out radio signals and things. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, Tesla was a very advanced person, but also very strange. I mean, for instance, he was kind of an enemy, can I say, of Edison, because he invented alternative energy. Alternating current, and of course, Edison invented direct current, and Edison truly wanted to keep that control over that massive amount of money.
Well, yeah. Well, Edison was a businessman. And
one of the things that Edison did was he had demonstrations using a dog where they would electrocute the dog, supposedly using alternating currents. Not really very accurate, but probably it didn't work in the long run, but it probably was very unpleasant.
Well, he was trying to scare people out of, going with Tesla's invention. But Tesla was amazing. He was a scientist. He was a purist, right? He didn't care about business, and that hurt him, obviously. And that's what's happening to us in a macro sense here, is that these inventions that are going on by scientists around the world is with like free energy. The people who have the ability to make money on oil and energy where you can charge people monthly, they don't want free energy. That takes away their whole industry and their way of living, their means of making a living, right? And their power. So it's very much like Edison and Tesla in their fight.
Ryan, who's working with us on the board, points out that Tesla also shocked an elephant for anti-Tesla propaganda.
Well, yeah.
So that's...
He was a good businessman. He actually didn't come up with a lot of the patents or a lot of the inventions. It was the people in his company that he hired, but he was a really great businessman.
Yeah, he was. Well, we're going to take a break now and invite our friends maybe to look more closely at Threshold.
Lord.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God! Are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born.
The more one touches on the idea of space travel, and perhaps an idea as lofty as man's true place in the universe, there comes one and another very intrusive and strange phenomena that frankly perplexes us. One of the speakers in a recent conference we discussed with a dark journalist about the private space program, a secret space program, was Linda Moulton Howe, a filmmaker and documentarian who gained notoriety for her investigation of cattle mutilations. Putting aside her contribution to that conference for a moment, here's a discussion of her first real awareness of the relationship between cattle mutilations and something from somewhere far away, as explained by the dean of Strange Talk Radio in his interview, Art Bell.
Tex Graves was the first sheriff that I was referenced to as being somebody who had been by then to about 236 mutilation sites. Think about that. One sheriff in one place, and know that in the state of Colorado during that period of time that each county in some sections was having over 200 animal mutilations. So in Colorado alone, in a 5 to 10 year period, there were thousands. All right, there were thousands. So now I'm going for the first time trying to get my bearings in a story that I only have the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News and the TV stations away from my own TV station reporting all these strange, bloodless, unusual deaths. So he had retired and was in a vacuum cleaner shop in Logan that he was repairing vacuums after being a sheriff for so long. And he had gotten for me specifically to look at, I remember the count because I counted them all out on the floor, 266 color Polaroid photos that he had taken of all these mutilations. And as I went through, there was one particular one that I asked him about. It was a steer, a heavy steer, a big steer, all black, lying on its right side, and the front legs and the back legs were together so neatly, in such neat parallel, that it looked artificial. But this is the way the sheriff photographed it at the mutilation site, that nothing had moved. Those hooves were on dry powder, and they are neat. There's no movement, there's no struggle, there's no tracks around this body, not even the steer's own tracks. And the head was down in a hole that the sheriff told me was 8 inches deep. And he said he stood there looking. The ear, the eye, the tongue, the jaw, the genitals, and the rectum are gone. The legs are as neat as a pin, no tracks, and here the head is down in an 8-inch hole. And he said, Linda, the only conclusion that we can draw is that whatever did this to this steer kept all of the body completely, totally paralyzed and immobile, except for the head. And the head, in some sort of agony, dug an 8-inch hole before it died. Now, I felt several things at that moment. I felt rage at what seemed cruelty. I felt fear about a technology that could do this. And then I said to Sheriff Graves, you're describing something flaunting its ability, as if there almost are calling cards in the way these mutilations are done, whether it's horses and cattle or dogs and cats, pigs. It's every domestic animal that you can think of, and I have seen photographs of deer, elk, marmots that have been subjected to exactly the same bloodless excisions, and the U.S. Forestry Service has known about them. And when I said to Sheriff Graves, it feels like something is flaunting, he looked at me, smoking a cigarette, eye to eye, and he said, the perpetrators of these animal mutilations are creatures from outer space.
Talk about a disruptive technology, Sarah. I'm talking about a seemingly bloodless surgical technology invading the world of cattle ranchers, local law enforcement, and forest rangers for years and years, which is ultimately passed onto the world as a phenomenon, sometimes associated with UFO phenomena, but in and of itself revealing a very unusual and complex surgical technique, nothing taught in medical schools at the time anyway.
Well,
how does this fit into our worldview? What do these events mean?
I don't know if it fits into the mainstream media view. I mean, they tend to, but at the time that she did this, she won an Emmy for this. This was, I think it was an HBO series called A Strange Harvest. Yeah. And she won an Emmy for her investigative work. So at that time, we were much more open to looking at these things. And
there are lots of them, though, and I think they're still going on.
Yeah, they're still going on, and it's happening more in other countries than it is happening here, but it's not the type of medical advancements that we have. As far as I know, we still can't do these things, and to be able to create holes with no blood and perfect incisions, and it's some kind of laser cutting that doesn't burn. It's absolutely amazing, and they look like they're doing research. They're researching the animals for some reason. And why are they doing that? And is it our own people researching, or is it, that are way more advanced and we don't have access to that? Or is it some other creature that we don't? Obviously, it's not the mainstream people doing this. It's either military that's advanced, or it's somebody from outer space or some other dimension. Because it is happening. They are seeing it. This is real, and they're documenting it. And these people aren't weirdos. They're normal, everyday researchers going in there. And if you listen to her talk, she was absolutely shocked when she first saw this stuff. It really scared her. It scared these people. This is the first time they ever they went in at this point and they never heard anything about this. She was actually a television producer, and she did scientific stuff, technology and things, medicine. And she was very smart. She worked in mainstream media and HBO special to do this. And she was just shocked when she first saw this, and it scared her. And so it was an average person going in and learning all these things. And then she became mesmerized by it and go, oh my God, there's more to all this. And I can't stop researching this now. And then it became her life, obsession almost. It's her passion. Obsession's not a good word. It's her passion to figure it out. And she's been traveling all over the world now and looking into this stuff. But she really did dig into something that was unexplainable. And has it reached the average person? I don't think so. I think the mainstream media laughs at this stuff now. Back at that time, they were taking it seriously because nobody knew what was going on. And maybe it's because it's not happening on our farms as much as it's happening now in other countries. And maybe that is why we're not talking about it as much. But it is a real phenomena. And the question is, who's doing it and why?
Yeah, it is a real question. We're going to go to a break now, and we had played Unchained Melody before by Patricia Welch, and now we're going to play something promoting Edgar Ahrens, who is a composer who works with her, and who sometimes does scores for TV and movies. I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com. New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to johnnybluestar.com and let me know. That's johnnybluestar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who is a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of this stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy. We ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
Well, you know, Sarah, there are several areas that are kind of related to what we're talking about. One of them is technology that we can use to travel to faraway places like other planets while our bodies stay here. And the other is, our mind to be here. Also, there is some very interesting stuff about the past architecture we're finding on our own planet. Maybe you could tell us about these things.
Well, both of those topics are extremely interesting. Well, we can start with the architecture that we're finding here, and then I'll move on to the technology of us traveling to distant planets. But what we're finding all over the world is old architecture that we didn't realize was there. I mean, the common theme is we think that we were hunters and gatherers 10,000 years ago, right? And that in ancient Mesopotamia is when they first started coming up with writing and agriculture and what is meant by, modern society type things where you have roads and you have architecture and you have government and things like that. Well, they're realizing that we were probably way more advanced than that before we became less advanced. And they're unearthing advanced structures everywhere. The pyramids are that point to that as well. No, any real open-minded researchers do not believe the pyramids are, were there as tombs. I mean, people have become, that's done. Nobody believes that. They just
what do they believe now?
Maybe the newer ones were, but the old ones believe that was maybe an energy device or something else. I mean, if you look at the way that was constructed, it's absolutely, we can't do that today. The way these huge blocks of stone were put together without any, with not being off at all, or maybe just a fraction, and having lines that you can't even put a credit card through. It's absolutely amazing. And then being in line with different structures around the world on the latitude and longitude and not being off by even a degree, that's amazing. And back then, they are not going to be able to do that back then as hunters and gatherers. So obviously, we were more advanced at some point. I mean, it's just obvious. You can't do that unless you're more advanced than hunters and gatherers. And I mean, that's just a fact. And the other things that they found is they found actual machining tools when they were building these structures that you can't do with hand tools. It's a machine-based diamond bit type marks that are in these structures that they have found. And they found these huge pieces of stone that are 200 tons and massive stones that just hadn't been moved yet, that were still in the quarry. And so they know that it was shipped for long distances. So, the thoughts are that sound technologies, ways to levitate with sound, they are realizing that we can do a lot more with sound than, in laboratories, they've been able to levitate small objects with sound. We don't know how to do large objects. And so they know that there was more going on in our past than what we think it is. And that's absolutely fascinating. In South Africa, they thought that there was hardly anybody there. But in reality, they found thousands, if not millions, of structures under the ground. And with the new, with the satellites that we have and Google Earth and things, they can see the structures under the ground now that we couldn't see before. So our new technology and the new stuff that's available to us is showing us that there's just so much more there. It's really amazing. So if anybody's interested in archaeology, it's an awesome time to be alive.
You think it's alien?
I don't know if there's enough facts to say that it's alien, or if it's just we were much more advanced in our past.
I see. Well, what about the other technology that you're talking about, for our bodies to stay here, our mind to be elsewhere?
Well, I mean, just think about it. We're getting closer to being able to travel we have probes that can go past Pluto, right? So we know how to at least get small things there. SpaceX and other commercial organizations are working hard to actually create the technology to be able to transport us places. So they're getting serious. People are getting serious about creating the technology to move. But there's other things that are pointing to the fact that we're getting close, like the 0-point energy advancements that we have. We know we can do some of these things. Other things is we have the ability to feed our eyes video. So like if you have a signal on Mars, you can directly signal it to your eyes as if you're seeing it through your own eyes. Right?
Really?
They have that technology. Yeah, they've had that for a while. So we know we can do that with our bodies. We can tap into our own bodies and manipulate and control our bodies as if it's sending our own signals. So that we know we're starting to be able to do. The other thing that we can do is hyper-realistic holograms. We have the ability to put a hologram there and make it seem like we're actually looking at something. And I did a show on this, but the Elvis Presley and the Michael Jackson and Marilyn Monroe, they have these avatars, or these they call them assets, but they're making these ultra-realistic holograms where you can't tell it's a hologram. And they're doing it with medicine as well, where they are teaching people how to operate on hearts and different organs with super hyper realistic holograms. And so like if you're cutting through something, they have the ability to put on a glove where you feel like you're cutting through something. And so when you're cutting through skin, it goes pretty easily. When you're going through cartilage, it gets harder and it crunches. And then when you go through bone, it's really hard. And so they're getting to that point now. So let's say you combined all those technologies that we're getting close to, and we decide, okay, we might want to go to Mars, but we don't really want to go to another solar system because the planet really isn't good for us, right? We can't live there. We might be able to start terraforming Mars or some other places, but it's so far away and it's so expensive. But what we can do is we can send out a spaceship with this different robotic technology, and we can feed our eyes. We can have all of us have our own hologram, and we can be there. For all practical purposes, we can feel like we're there.
Are we going to wind up being with these big heads in space, roaming around in flying saucers because all we're using is our brains?
Well, I mean, we can put a whole body to. I mean, it's like the Avatar concept, right? We could put together anything we want that would be us on another planet experiencing these things. We would feel it because we can send signals to our own body. We can put things to a video to our eyes. We can feel like we're there for real.
Well, I feel like my head is growing a little bigger, but I don't know.
I mean, does that make sense? I mean,
it makes sense. And
this isn't that far out. We are actually closer to being able to do it. And I think by the end of the century, we'll be able to do this stuff.
Well, I want to go to a slightly different subject, because you mentioned something before, which is very true, the dangers of nuclear weapons. And what have UFOs got to do with this? I had a tremendous experience in meeting Robert Hastings. And, it's often difficult to figure out the motivations of extraterrestrial visitors. And according to certain theories, many or all of the sightings are fake. But whether this is true or not, there's a set of sightings that makes me wonder what it's all about. These are sightings that were meticulously chronicled by Robert Hastings in his book, UFOs and Nukes. There are a number of UFOs in the proximity of nuclear missiles, and lots of them, actually. And Robert Hastings has interviewed something like 150 military officials who worked at these classified sites. And he notes that several times UFOs have shut down and actually activated nuclear missiles, not only in this country, but also at least once in Russia. I'd like you to listen to a description of a particularly important incident.
One of the most controversial but perhaps significant examples of UFO involvement with our weapons was the Big Sur incident that you describe in your book.
in this alleged event, which occurred in 1964, an Atlas D intercontinental missile launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base was seemingly shot down by a disc-shaped UFO. Maybe you could fill us in about details about this incident, the implications for government involvement in preventing the open disclosure of UFO events.
We primarily know about this case through the very courageous efforts of Dr. Robert Jacobs, who was an Air Force lieutenant in 1964. He was the officer in charge of photo instrumentation at the base. His job was to use a high-powered telescopic camera to film missile tests over the Pacific Ocean. He has been able, through his personal log and other means, to pin the date of this event to probably sometime in September of 1964. What they witnessed, long story short, through the telescopic camera was as the dummy nuclear warhead, which they were testing, which was being sent out over the Pacific Ocean for a splashdown, they witnessed on film a disc-shaped object with a dome flying in from out of camera frame, circling this warhead, and at 4 different junctures firing what looked like, he said, not quite like lightning, but very similar to lightning in appearance, a beam of some kind from the UFO to the dummy warhead. There were 4 separate flashes, at which point the UFO left the camera frame and the warhead began to spin and tumble and fell into the ocean hundreds of miles short of its target. A second officer who was involved in photo interpretation, a retired major named Florenz Mansman, who, after retiring from the Air Force, went to began research at Stanford University on various technical systems. Very intelligent, technically oriented man, has come forward after critics said that Bob Jacobs was lying, has come forward and corroborated his story. There are letters at my website on the document page in which Mansman saying Bob got it 100% right. But Mansman was a little reluctant to talk about it because the film was confiscated by the CIA, and he clearly says that. But apparently there was some pressure applied to Mansman, or at least he was concerned about pressure, and so what he said was far less provocative than Bob Jacobs. Bob Jacobs, on the other hand, said, I felt that the public had a right to know about this. He wrote a couple of magazine articles about it in the early 80s, at which point he began getting death threats over the telephone. Clearly somebody was very unhappy that he had gone public with a story that confirmed that whoever fly the UFOs not only can disrupt the functionality of nuclear missiles in their silos on the ground, but can actually pace them in space, catch up with them, as the film clearly demonstrated, and shoot them down, literally.
Are they looking after us, Sarah? Are there something out there that is actually concerned?
I hope so.
I do too, but you know, there's another phenomena that I want to bring up. And this is very, very interesting to me, and it was the actual subject of my first program. You know, we were talking about archaeological coding being implicit in some kind of extraterrestrial civilizations in Mars and the Moon, and you talked about this strange archaeology on our own planet that seems to have some connections between different archaeological sites. But there is also another kind of coding that seems to exist in crop circles that have frequently appeared on Earth. Filmmaker and songwriter, musician Patty Greer has spent countless hours in dozens of crop circles, you know, laying down, trying to concentrate, trying to pick up whatever she can because she feels like there is some communication. Anyway, all of this is mostly in England, but sometimes in other countries, including here. She does not necessarily attribute these to extraterrestrials, but rather to some kind of intelligence, perhaps indigenous extra-dimensional creatures or beings right here on Earth and perhaps somewhere beneath the Earth's surface. Listen to what she says, Sarah, about crop circles and its messages.
So I left my first crop circle with that many questions, and in all the years that have come, of course, the answers have been very clearly given to me, along with the information of why we are receiving messages in fields of wheat, corn, barley, oats, Brussels sprouts. We've seen crop circles in grass, short grass in parks, where all of a sudden there will be this raised, darker green circle, which I know most people have seen, because when I saw the photos of that, I went, oh my God, I've seen that before. And the following year, those same circles in city parks that had that raised green circle, if it just looked like freak, had mushrooms in a circle, which is why the ancients called crop circles fairy rings.
Wow.
And the paranoid ones called them devil's circles. But, you know, I don't give that much credence. I'm really more about the reality of what is. And what is that crop circles have an enhanced electromagnetic field. Crop circles, until foolish adults come in or humans come in and have to destroy it for whoever paid them to do so, they're perfect. They're enhanced, they're perfect, they're immaculate, and they are giving us information. And when we look at decades, history of crop circle documentations, we see that they come in codes, binary, Morse code, even Braille. They come in mathematics, sacred geometry, Fibonacci sequence, the Mandelbrot. I mean, all of the Platonic solids are found in crop circle patterns. And when we look at all those patterns in one spell, and we sit and just focus on pictures of crop circles, all of a sudden, there's these places in our mind, these lost DNA strands are reawakened, and all those ancient symbols being put before our eyes, through the heart, through the mind, are like these compressed files that explode into tremendous amounts of data and wisdom within us.
Wow. What do you think of that, Sarah?
Well, you know, crop circles is another one of those things that are made fun of in the media. And when you look into it, you know, there are a lot that are bogus, where they show those people with their big planks and they walk through it. But the ones that are unexplainable, where the shafts aren't broken, because when you do that, you break the shafts, and they just look different, right? Or they're just so complex, there's no way you could do it in the night without being able to look at it from a higher, it's very complex. But the other thing is that they match signals that were sent out by SETI. From what I understand, they're matching communication patterns sent out from different organizations. And I thought that was fascinating when I learned some of that. I don't, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want you to finish.
I was going to say, I don't know what to make of it, other than I would think that, you know, when I was talking about the fact that we can travel, we have the technology to travel, I would think that we might do something like that. If we think people are communicating with us, maybe we would try to send messages like that.
Well, you ought to go, I don't know if you have, or you're familiar with Patty, but pattygreer.net. That has a lot of her full-length features that are relatively inexpensive, but really, really interesting, because she's been in the field with cameras, and you know, she won awards too. She's a very, very interesting person, and as you can probably tell, there's something going on from just listening to her for a few minutes. I wanted you to just tell people, you know, how to, you know, something about your current plans and more about your show for just a minute or so before we have to leave.
Oh, well, excellent. You can always reach my show at SARAHWESTALL.com. I have a really fascinating one coming up on Monday with the president of SpaceX, which I brought up before, Gwen Shotwell. And I have some collaboration coming up with Dark Journalists. I'm going to be covering economic news and issues, but I always cover things that are changing, innovation, disruption. Where are we really going? I really like to get to the people that are on the ground and really understand it, the entrepreneurs and the innovators out there, and really give people an idea of where we're going. But I'm hoping we can all work towards making this world a better place for humanity, and not just be on a goal of making money for the sake of making money. We're not going to shut down innovations and technologies so that we can keep our cash flow going, nor are we going to go after technologies and innovations knowing that it can hurt society. So it's a ethical program, more conscious, business conscious program on what's going on with change. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety with all the significant changes that are going on geopolitically and economically.
We have to say goodbye now, Sarah.
Oh, I took too long. Well,
no, it's
thank
okay.
you very
it's
much.
Fine. It's just I'm going to be listening, and I hope other people will listen to your show and also to mine. And we'll be back next week on Threshold Radio with more interesting visits to important and strange and sometimes extremely enlightening places.
Thank you. I had a really great time.
Me too.
Views and opinions expressed on this program were those of the hosts and guests and did not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.